This is where I live because of the wind turbine farm in my garage. It was a room.
That door looks awful thick.
It's 5.5 inches thick, and it has thermal sound insulation in it.
This is like a bomb shelter.
Yes, it is. It is. And this is where I sleep every night to avoid the noise.
And what is the noise like?
It's like an airplane trying to take off and never going to its destination. And sometimes you hear the swishing sound. And it's like having an intruder in your backyard. It's like an uninvited guest, and it's torture. You have no control over it.
Is it always the same?
No, it changes on various days. It changes its level and it changes its density. Depending on, most of the time it's when there's inclement weather moving in, or the barometric pressure goes lower, and you can hear them they're very annoying, and it gives me a headache, and just my anxiety level exhilarates.
This is a personal question you
Sure.
don't have to answer. Do you have to have medication for that?
Yes, I do.
Is it affecting you?
Yes, it is.
I mean, is the medication adversely affecting you?
No, it's not. It's good for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a disabled combat veteran of the Vietnam War also.
I see.
And so I have an high anxiety level, and I'm also being treated for a condition called MST, military sexual trauma. And one of the things that when you're a victim of sexual trauma, you always want to know what your surroundings are doing, who's in your surroundings, and so on. And what this windmill does is it muffles the sound, so I can't hear as well as I ordinarily would, and I'm scared somebody could sneak up on me, and that's how overwhelming the sound is.
Okay, so you have a condition that is exacerbated by the towers.
Certainly do.
And did you talk with the wind officials about that?
Oh yes, I'm proceeding with a lawsuit, and right now it's in the Supreme Court to see whether or not they're going to hear the case.
Oh,
Docket 13, ARO 13185.
okay. But they haven't offered you anything?
No. I went to deposition through depositions, mediations, interrogatories, and so on. And what my lawyer at the time, I had Peter S. Kelly. He said that I was too far away. The wind farm considered me too far away, and that if they settled with me and offered me a settlement, that they would have to do everybody else in between us.
How far away are you?
1 2/3 miles from my house to the first turbine, and 9/10 of a mile from my property line to the first turbine.
Can you the sound waves and the percussion that you feel?
Yes.
Is there anything else that you've experienced in life that's like that?
When I was in the Navy, I was attached to an air wing, VA-82, and we had aircraft that was always doing touch and go on carriers, and then on my base in Jacksonville, Cecil Field, Jacksonville, Florida, it was similar to that. It's like that airplane is never getting to its destination.
Okay, see, what we want to do is to describe this for people who've never experienced it, and that might, certainly some men who've experienced what you have will do it.
Yeah.
All right. Don, did you take a good picture around? He's got his little wood stove.
Yeah, I got that on, yeah.
Yeah.
This,
And I'm going to start where we intended to
Sure.
start. That's just letting you know that the purpose of this
Right.
is for FMM to do some
Right.
publication of
Sure.
your story
Sure.
in order to better inform the main public.
Right.
And
That's my primary purpose too. I don't want to see other veterans and other people with disabilities go through the same thing that I have to go through here. In fact, what I'm doing is I'm in the preliminary stages of trying to get a bill through my local representative for what I call turbine insurance. And it's going to be titled 04758 because that's the zip code of Mars Hill's first wind farm.
Yes.
And what I like to do is I like to have the insurance companies, your regular homeowners insurance policy, offer home turbine insurance in case a windmill is erected after you live in an area and there wasn't one there before, or you build a house in an area and there wasn't one there,
Right.
and insurance companies would be forced to offer you this insurance and buy you out within the 3-mile radius regardless of what the decibel level is and so on. That's what I'd like to propose.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I got that idea, that's not my idea, I got that from a sociologist
Yeah.
from Michigan. Her name is Libby, Elizabeth Libby, and she came here and stayed a couple of days with me.
Really?
Yes, to
Experience
it, and also to go back home with a lot more information in Michigan.
Wow.
Do you have any idea of how many people within the 3-mile radius, as a percent, are supporting your ideas against wind?
Well, no, I have no idea what the percentage is. All I know is that around 17 families have settled, and they're gagged. They can't speak about the negativity of the wind farm.
Did they speak to you before they settled?
Yes, they did.
Did they tell you anything about it?
Yeah, they disliked it. They just, it was intolerable. And
What were some of the things they said that
were
they
getting
don't
ahead.
want, the wind company doesn't want people to hear?
well, people lose sleep overnight, sleep deprivation, headaches, nausea, sickness to the stomach. People were losing work, time at work, and things like that. These were, and I was present during the mediation meetings, so I'm fully aware. I was there from start to finish.
So did any of these people seek doctor's
Yes, they
assistance? Did anybody get treated?
Yes, they did.
But they're all still living in the area?
Not all. Some have moved out. Some, regardless of the settlement, they received the settlement and for a noise easement, and they still moved out. They just couldn't tolerate the noise.
How much did they receive? Can you tell us that?
I can tell you that the settlements were between $80,000 and $95,000, and after they had the attorney fees pulled out, there's somewhere between $39,000 and $54,000.
And that's above the cost of their house?
No, that was with their house.
So they
Only
got,
one person was bought out, and I don't know exactly what the figure was that he was bought out for, but he's since moved out of the area as well. And I'm going to bring you to that and show you that.
Okay.
Mr. Goslin suggested that I take a picture of all the medications that are related to his ailments exacerbated by wind. That's quite a hefty box full of medications.
And
Folks, this is no joke.
My kitchen table is my bench here for collecting evidence and information on the wind turbines. As you can see, there's 3 totes of information since back to 2003 and ongoing. And I've been crying out for someone to come up and to hear my side of the story. And finally, we're getting some people to come up, and some people are interested. Because people need to know about Maine's first wind farm. What is it doing to the people, how it's divided some of the community, and so on.
so can you tell us how you first heard about this windmill? And
Yes, the way I first heard about the windmill was prior to 2003. I didn't know a thing about it. And I was called in by the town office manager, which is Ray Marajuel at the time. He's the former town manager, and said that they wanted to do a sound test on one of my properties up at the old Craig farm, which he says, Mike, you'll get paid $1,000. He says, and regardless if they do it. So who wouldn't turn down $1,000? So I said, go ahead. But they ended up not doing the sound on my old Craig Farm Road property. They ended up calling me in again, telling me that they wanted to go with it on the mountain here, which was totally different because my old Craig Farm property is about 3 miles north of here, Wow. So it was a complete surprise to me. One thing about First Wind I have learned is they'll tell you one thing and do another. They are liars. They started lying. The first lie that they told me was that with this $1,000 deposit that I was going to get, there would be no 1099. And of course there was a 1099 later on that year. They were searching for my social security number. So that was the first lie that caught them in.
So you had to pay income tax on this $1,000.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so what happened is that the former town manager called me in and wanted to use my property to put 7 utility poles, service poles up on my property. Well, I wasn't interested in the least, not interested in the least. So they called me in again, and they told me that since I was the property owner, I could do what I want with my property, and that they were going to offer me some money for putting 7 transmission poles in. And I really wasn't on that idea at all. I didn't want anything to do with it. But what happened was the representative, his name is Bob W, we'll call him because he's got an extremely long name. He was representing Evergreen at the time, which was First Wind. And he told me that if I didn't go along with them putting 7 utility poles in the back of my property, that they were going to construct the utility poles on the front of my property on the opposite side of the utility company. And I said, well, why don't you just put them on the same side as the utility company? He says, we can't do that. So basically it was a threat. And the reason why I didn't want them in the front yard was, first of all, it was unsightly to have telephone poles on both sides of the street. And the other thing was that I was worried about the amount of carcinogens coming through the power lines. So I granted them permission to do a land easement in the back for 7 utility poles. Well, make a long story short, they breached that contract as well. They didn't even tell me that they weren't going to come. I had to find out from a surveyor. And the reason why they said they weren't coming through my property, according to the surveyor, was because I had 3 acres of wetlands, and they didn't want to go through that. Now, the thing of it is that presently my wetlands have been dried up. The 3 acres have been dried up because the construction and the blasting and the redirection of the water. Now First Wind is saying that I didn't have 3 acres of wetlands. Another lie. And the thing of it is that I don't think anybody has been adversely affected in Maine as much as I have. Because at the time I had seven horses here. And I had geese and I had chickens, and now I still have a lot more birds. I've got a lot more birds and so on. But the thing of it is that I had asked them during the construction, through Maine Drilling and Blasting, to call me because my daughters might be riding the horses during this blasting activity. And I didn't want the horse to be spooked. So they never called me. Never once did they call me after my request to be called and notified. And one day I was bringing in one of my horses, Atlas, and the drilling or the blasting took effect. And my horse spooked me. I mean, he got spooked, and he knocked me down, and I injured my right shoulder. So I had 4 weeks of therapy for my right shoulder. And all it could have been avoided by them calling me and telling me that, look, we're going to be doing some drilling or some activity today, and it's going to be noisy, and be caution with your horses. But they didn't do that either. In addition to that, I had a house full of company, and I don't remember the exact date. And because of the blasting, my septic line collapsed.
Oh my God!
And in the process of cleaning it up, I got feces in my eyes and my mouth and my nose, and I caught a bacterial infection, and I was sick for 9 months.
My God!
Yes, and it was a serious bacterial infection along with a fungus infection. And what they did is the First Wind and Maine Drilling and Blasting have got all their experts together, and of course they're denying everything. So at the Superior Court level, I lost, but I'm hopefully in the Supreme Court that they'll have some sense to listen to this case.
Go and walk us through what all of this is.
This right here, and this is continuing, this is most recent information I've been collecting and evidence I've been collecting and corresponding with the newspapers and TV like WLBZ2 TV, and these are
Are they going to do anything for you?
It's like pulling teeth. Nobody wants to do the story.
I know. Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And
You mean the television stations and the newspapers of the state of Maine are not interested in your story?
That's correct.
And you've tried?
Yes, I have tried with 6 different publications within the last 4 weeks. And the only one that did do anything was the Star Herald that just put a publication in on October 2nd on an editorial that I had printed out. They're the only ones so far are doing anything to tell people what's going on with Maine's First Wind Farm.
Any reason why that you can think of that these TV stations and newspapers are not interested in your story?
I don't know exactly what the reason, but it tends me to believe that they're biased.
That they've been bought?
That, not that they've been bought, but they're biased in
Biased.
bias in that they're in favor of the wind farm, and they don't want to tell people what the true story is going on up here. This is my horse and I Atlas there, and you can see the wind turbines in the background.
Yes.
And he's the one that knocked me down. He got spooked by the drilling and blasting.
What happened to all your horses?
Well, I only have 2 left, and they're in New Jersey. My daughter has them. I cut down on the horses.
Were the windmills affecting them in any way when they came?
Certainly were. You won't believe how my animals acted during the construction. And I had geese that ordinarily don't fly, actually flew off the ground, go for maybe 150, 200 feet. The dogs would bark constantly. One of the reasons why I no longer have any dogs is because the dogs that I did have were ruined because of the construction blasting. Every other noise would bother them after that.
Okay.
So
were they affected in any way like you are by the percussion? Or did you keep them long enough to find out if the percussion?
Well, if their speech to me was that they bark all the time and they didn't seem happy, I certainly would think that was something to do with the percussion of the windmills.
Okay, so you had them when the windmills were in operation.
Oh yes,
okay.
oh yes, oh yes,
Yeah.
And here's another letter from the Chronicle in Vermont that did another write-up on me.
From Vermont?
Yes, Vermont, yes.
How did Vermont get onto you?
I had talked to a woman that was an opponent of the wind turbines, Katie Anderson, and she suggested that I write to them.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that's yours.
Yep.
Here's another article that Star Herald did, and it's titled "Harmful Effects of the Wind Turbine Noise Are Real." And I'd like to read one section of it, if I may.
Sure.
Yeah. It says, "Will there be any noise? Will I hear them from my house at the bottom of the mountain? There is virtually no mechanical noise." This is from First Wind that was being passed around to the community. "There is virtually no mechanical noise from these turbines. If you are near a turbine, you may hear a sound of wind and the swishing sound made by the slowly turning blades parting the air. If the wind is blowing, the background noise of the wind in the trees is all you will likely hear. You will not be able to hear any noise at the bottom of the mountain." And that's yours as well. That's another example of an out-and-out lie. And here's another article that the Chronicle in Vermont did concerning my situation here. Okay.
Gosh,
So,
funny. All right.
yeah.
And then what else is all of this stuff? Just an overview.
This is my case being presented to the Maine Supreme Court. All those documents, and there's correspondence between me and the windmills attorney and Maine drilling and blasting attorneys. And
And did I understand correctly, you are acting as your own attorney?
I am. And the reason being is because my former attorney, Peter S. Kelly, said that he was an officer of the court and he couldn't proceed. And he said that according to the wind farm people, the First Wind, that I was too far away, and that if they did settle with me or we come to an agreement, they'd have to pay everybody in between, and they weren't going to do that. They weren't going to set a precedent for anybody on the west side of the mountain to get paid.
Why the west side?
Because that would be the first people that would get paid on the west side, is just because they only paid people on the east side and the north side.
They did pay.
Yes, they did.
And the justification was, again?
The justification was that there was noise and strobing, and that was affecting these people's health.
But not on the other side of the mountain.
The other side, most of the people on this side are, not most, but many of the people on this side are in what they call land or noise easements. So they're under a gag order, so they can't pursue a lawsuit.
Oh, so even though they are making the same noise all around the mountain,
Right.
just because you have a
Gag order
from
from First Wind, And what that means is that you cannot talk negative. See, there was 3 requirements in the settlement, and I'll go over them with you. Number 1 was a confidentiality statement. In other words, you cannot talk negative or discuss anything about the windmills like I'm doing to Friends of Maine Mountain. Can't do that. The second thing was a disclaimer. If for any reason that they find that the harmful effects of the wind turbines can cause you sickness or injury, that you have no recourse against the first wind. That's the second requirement. The third requirement is what they call a noise easement. And that requires that when you sell your house, the people who move in after you leave, they can no longer claim that the noise is bothering them. And that is evidence, and anybody that wants to find out who signed and agreed and settled, all they have to do is go to the Registry of Deeds in Holton, and it's documented. Okay?
Wow.
Yeah. So the thing of it is that this noise easement is for perpetuity. It's for endless. It's not for 20 years, 40 years. It's for the entire time that your home exists. And what I say is that most of the people who signed off on that is like they gave the problem passed on to their children and their grandchildren to deal with this thing. And like I was telling Paula, it's like that situation where you have this 95-year-old Jewish man in Israel, and he's frail and he's disabled and he's bending down on the ground and he's planting fig trees, and along comes these 3 young teenage boys, and they see this guy planting these trees, and they start laughing and chuckling at him because they said to the old man, "Oh man, what are you doing planting those trees? You're never going to see them grow." And the old man turned to him and says, "I'm not growing them for me, I'm growing them for you." And that's what these people that settled did, is they passed this burden, this noise easement, and these conditions onto their grandchildren and their children to deal with. And they just took the very minuscule settlement. And the other thing is, too, is that we discussed during the mediation meetings, and it was brought up by one of the people that settled, is that how about if we discover something that's harming us, can we tell our neighbors or can we tell people about it? And they said, the First Wind representatives and lawyers said, absolutely not. It's that once they sign that gag order, that contract, they're silent.
So basically, they'd be telling the same stories that you're telling.
If they didn't sign the document, but
right.
You're right.
So do you think they really understood the implications of this into perpetuity?
So we're 9/10 of a mile from the wind turbines right now. Now these people have complaints on the wind farm, but officially they don't want to bring up that issue because they're fearful it'll cause attention to the devaluation of their property. So what they basically say is it doesn't bother them, but unofficially, if you talk to them privately, it does bother them, but there's nothing they can do about it.
So tell us about the sign again.
Yeah, what I did is on this sign here, all I did was copy the First Wind signs and put the warning, wind turbine noise and falling ice. The reason why I did that is because I had one of my friends who did end up settling, who won't be able to talk now, but prior to him settling, he witnessed one of the turbines throwing ice over a quarter mile away. And so we don't know how far that ice can be thrown. And also, the town manager, Jill Rugsby of Bridgewater, told me that the First Wind had a vehicle. I don't know if it was First Wind's vehicle or there was a vehicle parked up next to the turbines, and one day ice was thrown and the pickup truck became immobile. They had to haul it out of there. That's how much damage was done.
Wow. So you say this is your wetlands all over here?
This
and,
all
or
over
was
there.
Wetland?
It was wetland. And I used to have frogs that used to grow in there, breed in there and so on. You don't see any frogs in there at all now. There's still some wet spots, but nothing like it used to be. The vegetation has changed, and the culvert always had water coming from it every day, and now it doesn't have water come from it hardly at all. And the thing of it is that it was actually, if I was to do this to a neighbor, then I would be in jail.
Absolutely.
But yet, what they did this to me, and they're getting away with it.
So explain again for our audience, how did that happen? They rerouted the water?
What they did is they changed the surfaces and the veins underneath through the blasting and dynamiting, and they rerouted the water.
Oh, okay. Wow. So you own all of this property?
Yes, I own almost I'd say about almost a quarter mile.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you got it all for sale, I see.
It's all for sale.
Yeah.
My house is for sale, and what my wife and I have discussed is that when we sell it, if we can sell it, we're never going to move near any hills or mountains again. And we're from Rhode Island. We moved up 446 miles from Rhode Island to get away from all this, the noise and so on, to have peace and quiet, only to be faced with these wind turbine noise. So the thing of it is that we seen it as rustic and scenic beauty, but not when you got those turbines, those big towers standing up there. And the thing of it is that I want to advise people who are moving into the state of Maine that if they're moving next to a hill or a mountain, be sure that they're not going to be doing any wind turbine construction, because they're going to lose the very reason why they moved up here.
And you know the irony? Block Island is hoping to purchase power from our wind turbines in Maine.
Yeah.
Rhode Island.
So your home state is
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 Rhode
buying electric from
Sure.
you know.
And that's another thing, is this electricity that these 28 turbines are generating is all going to Canada, but any specifics on where it actually is going is a secret.
It's going to Canada.
It's going to Canada. Every bit of that electricity is going to Canada, but nobody, like I said, the specifics on who's getting it, who's receiving it, where they're storing, is all a secret.
All right, so Mike, tell us about this ski
This is
resort.
Big Rock Ski Area, and right now they're in some financial trouble, and they're getting a lot of donations from private persons to help them out. But I believe that one of the reasons why they're in financial trouble is because the windmills have lost have caused the mountain to lose its rustic and scenic beauty, and I believe that is a turnoff for a lot of skiers. In addition to that, these turning blades during the wintertime carry ice and snow, and I believe some skiers are worried about personal injury because the ice and snow can come off of these wind turbines and cause injury to them.
Was the ski resort in any way involved in the, I mean, they knew this was coming and they didn't do anything?
I believe they did know it was coming, but to say with any certainty, I can't say.
Yeah.
These are the transmission lines from the wind turbines, and all the electricity is going through these lines right here. And these are the lines that I didn't want in front of the house. And First Wind, when they first were coming with the project, said that they weren't going to be able to put them on the same side as the utility company, but had to put them on the opposite side of the street, which means I would have had telephone poles on both sides, and these telephone lines would have been closer to my residence. And I believe there's a lot of carcinogen factors running in through these lines, and there's a lot of electricity. Now you have yet to discover how much electricity is harmful to the body, so I did not want these on it. So that's when First Wind lied to me and said they couldn't put them here, but they are here right now.
Mm-hmm. And tell us what your manager said.
Yes,
about...
the former town manager told me that you could stand under here with I haven't done it yet, but he said you could stand under here with a fluorescent bulb, and the excess electricity coming through these power lines from the turbines would actually light up the light. East Ridge Road. This is one of my neighbors that just left his house here, took a settlement from First Wind, bought a mobile home, and got out of Dodge, so to speak. As you can see, the lawn hasn't been cut. The bird nests are on the wires here, and look at how close he is to the wind turbines, or he was, I should say.
So when the sun is over there,
right,
he gets all the strobe.
So he gets the strobing.
Uh-huh.
And the noise.
And the noise. Can we legally walk up the street?
Yeah, you can walk up the street, but you can't walk on someone's property.
No.
Yeah.
So let's walk up
Pass
the
the
street.
pole. pole right there is, that's the worst sound. As soon as I walk out of my basement, that's the loudest and the worst of the sound comes.
Off the basketball?
Off the wind turbine.
Why is that, do you think?
I don't know. It seems like I'm down a little bit further and they're going right. It's. I don't know what the reason is. I'm not a geologist, but the thing of it is that when you're in this vicinity in my backyard, and especially right here, it's the worst sound. It's the worst of when it's making sound, it's the worst. And in fact,
right down here in this dip.
It's in a dip, and the thing of it is that I had the Dish Network man install that, and they were making noise when he came, and he said that he has installed them all the way around the mountain, and he said that this was the worst that he ever heard them, including from the other side. He said this was the worst.
And why aren't we hearing them now?
Good question. The reason why the wind's not the wind. First of all, most of them are not. Well, I guess they're turning, but the wind is in the opposite direction of us right now.
Yeah, look at how the trees are blowing.
Yeah.
It's
coming out of the southwest, and it's blowing towards the southwest.
Yeah.
East. It's blowing towards the
So
southeast.
if that same amount of wind, what would you estimate the speed of the wind today?
Today,
5?
I'd say less than that. 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'd call that a breeze.
It is not even a breeze. It's dead. It's dead.
Yeah.
It's not even a breeze, and that attributes to why you can't hear them today.
Right.
Yeah.
So are these hens and roosters
Yes.
on your property?
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were telling us that you also you do things with pigeons?
Yes.
The carrier pigeons?
Yes, we can come out over here.
Mike, we took a walk around your property,
Yes.
and we had a conversation about the wind through the trees, which we didn't experience today.
Right.
But can you tell us some more about that?
Well, I believe it's possible that the trees, the 4,000 white pine trees that I'm surrounded by, is actually acting like a vacuum and sucking the noise in from the turbines. And when the noise is there, I feel it's like torture because I have no control over it. And it gives me a headache, and it makes me sick to my stomach when I look at them. And fortunately for the trees, I don't have to look at them.
I'm just surprised that when we go out on your property, we can't see the turbines, yet you still say you can hear the sound.
Oh, yes.
And I think you said you could hear it from as far away as 3 miles. Can
Oh,
you
yes.
say some more about that?
Yeah, my mother lives in Mountain View Apartments. It's Scoville's, 7 Scoville Street, apartment 14. And she's about 3 miles away, maybe a little less. And when I'm visiting her, I can still hear the wind turbines over there. And she can hear them as well. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And that's why I'm proposing in the legislative process that I'm proposing that for insurance companies, that if they could offer insurance to prospective home builders or home buyers, that within a 3-mile radius, that they don't have to prove how much decibels they're hearing or what's the sound level. If a wind turbine, industrial wind turbine is constructed within 3 miles, they should have an alternative to be bought out or compensated for that. And that's in the preliminary stages, but that's, I believe.
That's what's interesting is that the wind law specifically says that within 3 to 8 miles, the wind company has to do something, but nothing about how it sounds. If you can hear it within 3 miles, that is something.
What First Wind is saying is that the sound that I'm receiving here, and they do that by mathematics and graphs, that the sound I'm hearing here is no louder than a quiet library, which is completely false. They had promised me that they were going to do a wind decibel test here, and they never did do that test. I formally requested recently for the DEP to do the test, and I haven't heard back from them yet.
Okay. And were you telling me there's a special kind of equipment that you have to get the percussion effect?
That is an area that I don't know too much about. I can tell you that I used to work for EAW in Whitensville, Massachusetts, and we used to make sound speakers. I used to work for a gentleman named Ken Forsyth, who is the founder of Forsyth Speakers. And one of our contract was to the military. In 1968, during the riots in Chicago, they used our low-density speakers to dissipate the crowds in the riot crowds. And what they did is it sent out a low-density sound so that you would if you were in the crowd, you would lose your bodily functions. You would crap your pants or pee your pants, and that certainly breaks up the crowd. And so they use it as an anti-crowd device. So I'm a little bit familiar with that.
Okay. Are you saying that the percussion sound that you hear here is anywhere close to that?
Oh, yes. Yeah, because I get sick to my stomach, and I get headaches, and like I said, I have to sleep in my room, which is fairly soundproof, and I still have a radio on. I was in the basement 4 weeks ago, and the thing of it is that through that tiny little window, I could hear with my radio on in the basement. I could still hear the wind turbines. In fact, they woke me up.
Right.
And it sounds like your furnace is on, but your furnace is not running.
Right. And didn't you say that you also went out and they were doing something with a farm over there?
Yes, there was a harvester. You could hear a potato harvester in the distance, and I was sitting on my front stairs, and I could still hear the wind turbines. They were still had more noise than the harvester was generating.
Wow. It's just amazing to me that all these people around here continue to live with this sound. And you were telling us something about the liens that people have on their property. Could you say some more about that?
Yes, there's two different kinds of easements. There's the land easement, and then there's the noise easement. And many of the people who are surrounding me are tied into either one or both of them. So they've been gagged, and they can't talk negative about the situation. So what they would say officially to someone like yourself, if you ask them, is that it doesn't bother me. But unofficially, if you talk to them on a personal level, they'll say yes, it does. But they don't want to bring attention to their homes, because that would mean that they would possibility of devaluating their property.
But weren't you also saying that if they try to sell their property, the next people who buy it have the same?
Yes, these noise and land easements are for perpetuity. Well, correction, the land easement is for 40 years, but the noise easement is for perpetuity, for the entire lifetime of the deed. In other words, if someone else buys the property, they cannot complain about the noise even if it bothers them, because they agreed to this noise easement. And this is recorded in the Registry of Deeds in Holton, Maine.
Unbelievable. And as we were driving by looking at some of these houses, you were very particular that we were not going to get on anybody's property. We had to obey all of the rules. And you said something about they were looking for someone to make an example of?
Yes, during the mediation meetings that I attended to every mediation meetings as a group, they said that one of the questions was what happens if they violated, these people that signed the contract violated these contracts, and they said that they would make an example of them, and they were in the process of making an example of someone in New York.
Wow. In New York?
In New York.
New York.
Yeah.
Okay. So, as we drove by the turbines, we were remarking how much smaller they are than the turbines that are going to be going on Bowers Mountain, which is, well, we hope they're not going to go on Bowers Mountain, but which have been proposed to go on Bowers Mountain.
Right.
But you said you had evidence or you'd heard something about these turbines were going to be increased in size? How?
Yes, I don't know exactly how I heard that. It may have been just a rumor, but what I heard is that they were going to increase the length of the blades, and they were going to do it under a maintenance schedule versus a DEP permit schedule. Now, I don't know if they've done that. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I heard. And like I said, it's a small community, so you hear a lot of things. For example, when they were coming in, the project was first coming into town, many people were saying that the contract for the first wind was bought at a cheap lunch. And I say we didn't even get a continental breakfast out of the deal.
Yeah, exactly. So, tell me about the effects that this is having on your whole community.
It is having an effect. In fact, some people have criticized my signs, and they encourage me to leave the lawsuit alone, just drop it, leave it alone. And so it's set a division within the community.
See, when Mars Hill was instituted, there was no such thing as a community assessment.
There was no community assessment done by an epidemiologist. No one came around here and actually searched out to see if people like with disabilities, mental disabilities or physical disabilities were in the area and how it would affect them. Those studies were not done at all. And I did mention that in my Supreme Court documents, that an epidemiologist in a community assessment was not done. And I'm not the only veteran that's been affected by this. I've talked to veterans as far as Washington State. I've talked to veterans in Massachusetts, veterans in Maine, and this, for people who like myself who have combat neuroses and PTSD, this is definitely affecting us veterans. And I wrote to Mr. Michaud. I've talked to a representative for Susan Collins, and over an hour, and I have gotten no response from neither one of them.
Has anybody else in your family experienced any effects as a result of your closeness to the turbines?
Yes and no. And the reason being is that I'm home 24/7, and so I'm susceptible to the windmills all the time, where my wife works and she's separated for 8 hours a day, and then she comes and she stays right in the house and she puts the TV on, so she's not subjected to the thing. But every visitor that I've had has, that when I pointed out to them the sound, they definitely hear the sound. In fact, my neighbor across the street, John DeVoe, said that he's about 2,000 feet away from me, and as a neighbor, and he says that he couldn't live with the noise that he heard at my residence. He could not live here.
Right. And not only are you here 24 hours a day, but you also do a lot of work outside with your farm animals, and used to do your garden, and
Right.
so.
Yeah, my home is no longer my home.
Yeah.
It's not the same place. It's like, I know I'm being repetitious, but it's like having an intruder or an unwelcome visitor at your house. It's just the noise is there, and it's not, you're paying the taxes on it, you own it, you can call your own, but you've got some unwanted visitor here.
Yeah. And you did tell us a little bit about some of your farm animals and your dogs and the effects that it had on them.
Yes, the construction effects on the
construction.
animals was, and I'm not the only one. There was other people around the mountain that their animals were affected as well. The dogs would go crazy barking during the construction. I had geese that actually would, and domestic geese are not known to fly, but actually would leave the ground for about 1,500 to 2,000 feet. They'd fly away because the ground shook so bad. And again, during the construction, I was bodily injured twice. Once was my horse knocked me to the ground during the drilling activity and blasting activity. And another time is the septic line to our house was collapsed by the blasting, and I caught feces went into my mouth and my nose, and I had caught a bacterial infection. I was sick for over 9 months. I was put on the heaviest antibiotics that you could be without being intravenously fed.
So, did I understand that you had 2 cases before the Supreme Court?
Yes, I have 2 cases against the Supreme Court. One is against Maine Drilling and Blasting, and one is against First Wind. But they're in a combination of one, and I don't understand that completely. Representing myself, I don't understand that completely, but that's the way it is. And I've done all the requirements, which was a lot of help from my wife and so on to get all these required documents on the record, and everything has been done, and we're just waiting. We're hopeful. The very least should happen is that the Supreme Court kicks it back to the Superior Court for reconsideration.
Yeah. Can you tell us what your cases are about?
They're about bodily injury and noise harming my health.
Okay.
And it's docket ARO 13-185. As I said in all my editorials that I have written, is that we need to slow down with the construction of these wind turbines and take a closer scientific look at what's going on, It's like cigarette smoking. When cigarette smoking was first introduced and it was a normal activity for the citizens of the world, we thought it was good for losing weight and calming nerves, and we only find out later on that it causes cancer and death. So we need to slow down and take a look at what's going on with these windmills. Do more studies and talk to more people. Do more community tests. That's what I suggest. And no wind farm should be constructed within 3 air miles of a potential human habitat.
3 miles.
3 miles.
Okay. Wow. Well, as you say, truth and justice will prevail.
Yes, truth and justice will prevail. And I believe what the lies and deception that First Wind is doing is they're paving a pathway out of the state of Maine. And eventually the citizen will wise up and they will no longer... In fact, Mars Hill is the first time a wind turbine farm was constructed. Well, my objective, and it is possible, that it'll be the first wind farm removed from the state of Maine.
Wow. So can you give us a few examples, just off the top of your head, of ways in which First Wind's lies have affected the wind industry in Maine?
Sure, they'll say one thing and the First Wind will say one thing and do another. That's been their routine. They'll say anything and do anything to get an easement or a noise easement or a land easement just so that they can continue. And I believe if the funding wasn't available, this whole thing would collapse.
Okay.
Where is their funding from?
The funding is from the federal government.
The production tax credit?
Yes.
Okay. The relaxed way. Don't wait till he's going.
Yeah. My fruits of my labor here are really that another veteran doesn't have to go through what I'm going through here. They move up to Maine for their peace and tranquility, and they end up getting noisy, a noisy neighbor. And I'm just trying to prevent that and share with the community what is actually going on, because most of the people, well, I shouldn't say most, but many of the people have been quieted by the gag order. And I'm not quieted by the gag order, so I can talk out and hopefully help other veterans. I wrote to the DAV, the Disabled American Veterans. I wrote to the American Legion. I wrote to the Veterans of Foreign Wars. I'm telling everybody I can about what's going on with this wind turbine noise and strobing. Yeah.
Okay. So, how long have you lived here, Mike?
We've lived here 23 years. In the 23 years, my wife and I, Robin, have raised and participated in raising 23 foster children, including their respite time, and 19 foreign exchange students from all around the world.
And you had kids of your own?
Yes, I have 3 children of my own, all grown up. My youngest one is 28.
Alright.
Okay, we would like you to leave the site.
So you've been given a request by the property owners to leave. This is a lawful order. Typically 5 minutes to clear out or you're going to be arrested on those trespass.
Okay. That's fine. We have 5
Okay.
minutes.
You guys got anything on you we need to know about?
Absolutely nothing.
Wanna
No,
get
it's
your hands out
non-violent.
of your
It's basically a publicity thing. We're not into
Keep outside where you can stay.
There's 5 of us going to be arrested.
Pardon?
5 of us are going to be arrested.
I'm gonna have to sit tight because this subdivision or this project is illegal. It's in a residential zone. And
I'm not here to debate or discuss that.
debate the constitutionality or the legality of it.
That's not something we're going to settle here in the rain on Reed and Reed's on this private property. Okay? The people that are responsible for this property have asked everyone to leave. No one has left. You guys are not leaving. You're trespassing, including yourself.
Yeah, being a 100% disabled veteran, I hate to see our constitutional rights stepped on, so I guess I'm gonna have to stand up and protest for truth and have our facts presented in court, where they weren't allowed in court earlier.
People.
might at least want to inform them that they're in a residential zone and they're illegally developing a commercial wind farm unconstitutionally against Maine state law and federal law, as well as the code enforcement officer was told that this is a wind farm, not a commercial wind generating entity. So they're in the zone residential. So we have to get someone to listen to us, because this is completely illegal what they've done. Push money ahead to expedite their activities within a residential zone area. So I'd ask you people all to come on to the other side behind our Constitution and do what's right and stand up for justice. Otherwise, we can stand and watch the Jews basically be taken away like in World War I, World War II. Can't take the neighbors away today.
That's one thing we don't quite understand is how a project like this can be totally illegal, and then you give them credibility for doing what they do and arrest us. It's kind of hard to figure the devastation and the destruction that they're doing illegally with corruption. Different kind of job, that's all.
All right, listen up. At this time, you guys single file. We're in a group. Head right on down. Where the other people are. All right. Right down there where the other people are. Are you willing to do that at this time?
No, sir.
Okay. No one's willing to do this.
Want to shut that down before I
Okay.
put your cuffs
Good.
on? You're under arrest for criminal trespassing.
Okay.
I'll determine whether they go on the front or the
No,
back, and they're going on the back. You want to close that camera down and put it in your pocket before I do that.
No. Relax.